This is our third and final video on literal equations and formulas, and this is to simply just to solve this problem that I've asked you to solve in the last video and to give you your summary questions. So this shouldn't be very long of a video. What I need you to do is to make sure you've got your notes there in front of you, and hopefully you've gone through this on your own, but if you haven't, because you're not really sure where to start, different colored pencils or highlighters may help whenever you're solving word problems to pull out the important information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight in yellow the question. What is the height of a triangle? Height of a triangle, right here. Now, the information they give me to use in order to find the height of the triangle is the area, 24 inches squared. Make sure this is 24 inches squared. Those are our units. And the base is 8 inches. Now, I didn't highlight length of and that sort of thing. I just know the base is going to be 8 inches. The area is 24 inches squared. And the question it's asking me is for the height of the triangle. Alright, so again, if you want to draw yourself a picture, this is really good practice for when you get to geometry. And let's go ahead, rather than drawing a regular equilateral looking triangle, let's draw a right triangle because these are easier to, let's turn this around. These are easier to find the area of. So let's look at this one. Let's fill in the information we have from our word problem to our picture. Alright, what is the height of the triangle? Well, we know that this is a right triangle, which again I said was much easier to find the area of. The height of the triangle is h. We don't know it, so we're going to make it h. The next piece of the information that we know, the area is 24 inches squared. So in this triangle, the space inside is 24 inches squared. Now remember, we talked about how this exponent is not actually, this number is not actually an exponent, it's a superscript number, it's just the units here, so don't square your 24. And then the last thing that we know from our word problem is the base is going to be 8 inches. Base is typically what the triangle is sitting on, if you have it sitting upright. So the base of this triangle is 8 inches. Alright, so we know base, we don't know height, and we know area. So what formula are we going to use? Well, we need to use the formula for a triangle. Area equals 1/2 base times height. Alright, we need to solve this equation for the unknown variable. Well, the unknown variable in this problem, what we have highlighted in yellow in our word problem, is the h. We don't know the height. So that means we need to move the b and the 1/2 over to the other side of the equal sign. We want this yellow h to be all by itself. Alright, well, let's analyze. We've got 1/2 base times height. 1/2 times base times height. The only operation that we're saying there is multiplication. All of these are attached by multiplication. Now, I don't want you to write this. I just want you to pay attention to what I have up here because I want to show you the wrong way to do this. Okay? Oftentimes what I have people do is they know, okay, well, I'm multiplying 1/2 and b times h. So I'm going to move the 1/2 and the b all at once, which is not necessarily a bad thing often. But if I'm going to move 1/2 b away from the h, the inverse operation here is to divide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide. Do not write this. This is the wrong way to simplify this. You're not going to get a very pretty answer. I'm going to divide this side by 1/2 b, which means I'm going to have to divide this side by 1/2 b. And I just want you to see what this looks like. If I try to clean this up, okay, I have a divided by 1/2 b. And while that will leave my h all by itself over here, which is what I want, this is not pretty. You are not going to have fractions on the bottom of fractions. Okay? You do not simplify expressions or equations in this manner. So this is the reason why I said don't write anything, because this is not correct. Okay? So let's back up. Let's remove all of this that we just did. And I want to show you the best way, the correct way to solve this. Alright. I still want to move my 1/2, and I still want to move my b. That's necessary. But let's move them one at a time. Alright. Let's look at our 1/2. We've discussed dividing by fractions when we were solving one-step equations and even two-step equations and on. And I told you if you're multiplying by 1/2, you can divide by 1/2. But like I just said here, you're going to wind up with a fraction on the bottom of a fraction. Can't have that. So the other thing that I taught you to do was, rather than divide by this fraction, what you can do is multiply. Hopefully this will bring back some knowledge here from previous videos. Multiply by its reciprocal. Well, reciprocal is 2/1. You just flip your fraction. Now, traditionally you would just write the 2. You don't typically write 2/1. But to help you visualize this, I did write it that way. Now, if I'm multiplying by 1/2 and then multiplying by 2, what's half of 2? Well, that's 1. That's why I can multiply by its reciprocal. But now if I multiply this side by 2, or 2/1, then I have to go over here to my a and multiply it by 2/1. Now again, 2/1 is just simply 2. So 2 times a is now 2a equals, and then we just talked about how half of 2 is 1. If I'm multiplying by half and then multiplying by its reciprocal, those are inverses of each other, then I'm simply left with BH on the right hand side. Now all I've done is solve this for BH. I haven't solved this for H. All I did was move the 1/2. I still have my yellow H here, my unknown height that I've got to get by itself. I've got to isolate that H. So now how's the B attached to the H? Well, it's attached by multiplication. So this isn't a fraction. I don't have to worry about its reciprocal. Since I'm multiplying by B, the inverse would be to divide by B. So what I do to one side of that equal sign, move over and do it to the other side of your equal sign. Now I can't literally divide B into 2a. I don't know these values as of yet in this problem. So I'm just going to rewrite that equation as 2 times a over b equals, and then b divided by b. Anything divided by itself is 1. So I'm left with simply my h. And there you have it. That is the area of a triangle solved for h. And you may very well see this question again somewhere, so know how to manipulate your formulas. Now, what I can do with what I have a box around, I'm not finished. What I need to do with this formula is plug in the numbers I know from my triangle. Alright, so notice I kept a capital A because that stands for area. I didn't change it to lowercase. Always be careful with your letters. So I'm going to take my area, I know is 24, and I'm going to plug it in for A. So to rewrite this, 2 times 24, and then that's divided by my B, which is my base of the triangle, which is 8, equals my height, which is my unknown. That's what I've got to find. So now I can type this in my calculator. I can simplify this, but if you're using your calculator, you have to be very, very careful. If you type this in your calculator, 2 times 24 divided by 8, in any calculator, you are going to get the wrong answer because your calculator, well, in this case you may not, but just as a heads up, your calculator follows order of operations. And if you don't make sure your calculator understands what's the numerator and what's the denominator, in many cases it will give you the wrong answer. Now, because order of operations tells us to multiply and divide left to right, Your calculator will multiply these and then divide by 8. So you'll be okay with this problem. But just in the future, always make sure your calculator knows what is the numerator, what is the denominator, so it can take care of the top and bottom before division. So always be very careful with that. But in this case, we have 2 times 24. I'm actually going to work this out step by step. Gives you 48 over 8. That's our height. And then we'll write our final answer up here. 48 divided by 8 is 6. Now again, we talked about in the last video in that question that you always use your units, especially if they've been given to you. So the height of this triangle is 6 inches. Now please feel free to go back and double check your answer. That is great practice. Okay, 6 times 8 and then take half of it. Half base times height. And if you get 24, then you know without a doubt that is the height of your triangle. Alright, so last thing for solving literal equations in formulas is your summary. And you have actually 2 summaries here. The first summary question, what situations can best be modeled by literal equations? What situations can best be modeled by literal equations? So just give me 2 or 3 different situations where you will use literal equations. We've talked about those in the past few videos. And then B, summary B. For the following word problem, there are 3 things you must do for this word problem. First, you write the formula that you must use. Second, you substitute in the values of the variables you know. And then third, solve the equation. So basically you're doing everything we've done in the last few problems for this word problem. Now we'll tell you formula. If you're not really sure, please go to page 110 and look at your formulas. The formula you need for this word problem is actually on that page. So please make sure you answer both summary questions before moving on.